Hey folks, and welcome to the Salty Seaman. Another Tales from the Fleet, another jump ahead. Interesting little tale from a little bit later in my career. About this point, I was on. I'd gotten out and came back in. I had gone through my new training school and I've been stationed on my first command as a journalist in my second part of my career as a journalist on the USS John C. Stennis. John C. Stennis, named after a famous Mississippi senator who was a big part of the buildup of the nuclear navy back in the day. Hence, he's like one of the few guys who ever got or the only guy who's like a non-president or military member who ever got a carrier named after him. So all stuff I had to know as my new job doing public affairs, journalism, broadcasting, vice being a yeoman. So yeah, know all sorts of interesting facts about the ship. But not going to focus on that. Not even going to focus on this as the one and only true deployment I did on this ship, but just a little bit that happened basically towards the end. And it ended up getting me, my picture at least, into the Rolling Stone magazine. So I'd been on the ship for about a year at this point. We'd just been doing workups. I was sliding into, the new job. And I was pretty damn good at it. I was promoted to a couple of pretty high level positions pretty early on. I made third right before I got there. I made second first time up right before this deployment. So, and overall, I have very, very fond memories of this deployment, in terms of how I was treated, in terms of, doing the job and getting done what I wanted to get done for the most part. Though it doesn't matter what you do, it seems like, you can't always get what you want sometimes. And part of the story will go into that. More reflecting on a coworker of mine. Speaking of, my buddy Chris at the time just came on board another second class, now a senior chief. And he is a person who is very goal oriented. He has a lot of bigger plans than the average sailor. I always found in terms of where his career is going and what to do for it. Hence why he's a senior chief now on a very tight rate, especially at that level. But he happened to be friends with the manager of the band, the Wallflowers. If you don't know the Wallflowers, either before your time or you just forgot them from the late '90s, they were a rock group fronted by Jacob Dylan, the son of Bob Dylan. They had a couple of big hits. One Headlight probably being their most famous, and another they covered Bowie's Heroes on the Godzilla soundtrack. So Chris has been talking to me since the beginning of this deployment, like man, this could be really big, for the ship. I can pull this off and, pull this known band on here, perform a concert on the ship. At some point, I think that would be, a really big deal. Definitely a feather in his cap. And I was like, yeah, man, go for it. Definitely out of my wheelhouse. I was concentrating on my other things I had going on. Including, I wrapped up getting my ESWAS pin at the beginning of that deployment, and at the end, I got my air warfare, and in between, I was managing a lot of different parts of our little department in the TV studio / TV control. But, I was, friends with Chris, and, I kept up with what was going on with him. And it became one of those weird projects, watching, definitely a big learning example for me of how shit works. This was his baby, this was his idea, and he basically got no help whatsoever the entire time. It was, took it to the captain, got approval if he could make everything logistically go off and get them there without any, trouble to the ship, beyond that. So it was all left in his ballpark to make this shit happen. And then coordinate with the ship's ops and whatnot but for the most part, it was on him. And, it's one of those things I witnessed, just how much help he was not getting, because obviously this is not important thing for the ship. This is right after the Iraqi war started. We did not go to the Middle East, which is a bit unusual for a carrier you'd think about this time. We ended up on a surge deployment, and they kept it a surge deployment, which basically entailed we went to Pac Fleet, we went to the Pacific, and we sat off Korea for a long time, watching them. Just a reminder, like, hey, just because we got a war going on here doesn't mean we're not looking at you. And we managed to top it off with a visit to Perth, Australia before we went home. So overall, that part's enjoyable. But along this time, I'm listening to, Chris talking to me about it. He's like, yeah, I got the band, he got the band on board. They wanted to do it. Started working with the ship's ops best he could, trying to find a date to do it, and when they could feasibly fly them in at basically no cost. And that's kind of where he did pretty much all the legwork up until we left Australia, and we're going back to our to Hawaii. And they would come on after and basically join us for like the last day leg in, as that's what they ended up deciding on. Like, we're gonna have this band play in the hangar bay, and Chris had worked up all the logistics, including how to get them on a base, how to get them on a cargo flight, how much their equipment and everything was. Like, he had to do legitimately had to go do all the mathematical linguistics and logistics of the weight of their stuff, and can we get them on one flight, where are we going to get it. He did all that. It was, and everything else was just kind of fed to ops and up the chain from there of what's going to happen, and then the ship responded from there. Point being, Chris handled 90% of all that, which is very impressive, especially for a second class. But we get to, the band being on board. Now, anything dealing with public relations and celebrities goes through our office, obviously. Chris is handling stuff straight from the management, but they needed, we couldn't, the band members themselves needed to be around, get around to where they needed to go, because, once they flew on, we took them around the ship, gave them the guided VIP tours. We took them here and there, and essentially, a few of us other journalists got assigned, different guys. I ended up with Jacob Dylan himself. Was my, he was an interesting cat, pretty quiet, little Hollywood. And it was just like, oh wow, man, that's crazy, man. Oh wow, I can't believe you guys do that. Oh, it's like, no, let's go. I was like, well, we take up at the wardroom to eat. He's like, no, I want to eat with the troops. And I ended up taking him down to basic mess decks, and of course got, I was like, hey, I got Jacob Dylan. Can I get headline privilege here? And they're like, yeah, go through. And he was a cool cat, and he, we sat, and a few people came over and talked to him. People knew who he was and were fans, and a lot of that cool stuff happened, and they were all smokers. And I think like one time I took him out to I was taking them out just a catwalk. It wasn't a Disney smoking area. At one point, and I know Jacob and another one of his band members, like, they wanted to go, like, okay, where does everybody else smoke? I took them to the regular catwalk smoking spots once. But for the most part, like, there were some hiccups and complaints, but eventually I got, permission, directly from the captain. Is like, hey, when you want to take Jacob Dylan or his band or anybody else out for a smoke, you go here on this deck on this catwalk, and we'll let anyone around them wondering what the fuck you're out there, what you're doing. And that came up too. They were doing, I think they might have been doing a FOD walk down. That's, if you don't know, that's where they're walking down the flight deck for debris, stuff that would get sucked up in engines. And and we just gotten permission from I guess the XO or whoever from the bridge is like, hey, I'm taking they want to go for a smoke, I'm taking them out to the catwalk. They're like, yeah, go ahead. And word didn't get down to one of the supervisors who came over and yelled at us, and we had to get that cleared up. So that was kind of funny. So yeah, they have the concert, and it's like I think it was like an hour set, and I'm right off of it. I'm kind of running logistics and making sure certain things are working the way they're supposed to do it. The ice seamen mostly set up the AV and their equipment in the hangar bay, and they played their songs. They played their hits. There were a lot of girls on board that were suddenly wearing makeup I'd never seen wearing makeup before, hanging out in the front row. You know how that goes. And they played all their songs, and they were great. It was a fun concert. It was a great little cap off. Not the biggest band in the world, especially in 2004. They're a little past that, their peak, but they were known, and there was definitely enough people who were really interested in seeing what they were doing, and we had a good, a good concert, and a lot of thanks goes to Chris for that. The post note on the Chris part is he got fucking no recognition for it whatsoever. He walked off that boat. I remember talking to him a couple of months later, just like, dude, I didn't even get a letter of appreciation. He not one thing for all he did for that. So, shout out to Chris Fowler and the work he did on that. Superb. And as I saw myself on that ship, sometimes if I had criticism, is a lot of times some big doings got kind of lost in the shuffle in terms of recognition. But overall, I don't have complaints about the New Orleans I do have complaints about the New Orleans story for the day. But John C. Stennis, not a lot. I really, one of the better ships I was on. But leading to my question, the morning we were pulling in essentially, and we were flying them off ahead of time back to, I believe, North Island. I took them out for a last smoke in the morning. Me, Jacob, and their manager, along with me and my friend, another Chris Gethings, the late great, rest in peace. I took them out for a smoke on our secret catwalk, and his manager's like, "Hey, can I get a picture of Jacob with you guys together?" So we pose, and I think I got a cigarette hanging in my mouth, and Chris has one, and Jacob has one, and take a little picture with a little digital camera. And we're like, "Yeah, okay, sure, cool." So this is pull-in day, man the rails. We've been on deployment for 5 months. Pulling back in, I'm working on, I'm putting out, I was the ship's newsletter editor at the time, so I'm I've been putting out the homecoming newsletter, and I'm trying to get it going around the ship, and at the same time, like I'm the press release guru because I write really fast. So my boss is calling me in, like, I'm trying to get this done. He's like, "Yeah, I got that." But, also, like, "Hey, here's, this is going to be the press release you're going to put on the front cover of this. So, like, help me write this real quick." So I'm doing that. And then he gets in the middle of that while we're writing it, Commander Barker, Corey, my now personal friend of mine outside of work, gets a message back from their manager that says they had already landed. He's like, "Hey, can we publish this picture I took of 2 of your sailors with Jacob at the out smoking?" And he asked me, and I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" I'm like, "Where?" I was like, "They're gonna try to get in Rolling Stone, but no guarantees. But they're submitting this." I was like, "Okay." I think my luck. It's like, yeah, they'll submit it. Nothing will happen if they even do submit it. But so I'll go about my business, get the newsletter out. We print it in full color, which is kind of a little hoity-toity for the time. And do my job. We pull in. Successful deployment, blah, 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 blah. Last deployment of the F-14 Tomcat from the West Coast. Also another story for another day. And it wasn't a week later, I put out on my live journal, for those who remember what a live journal is, hey, I might be showing up in Rolling Stone, and that's the first I got wind of it. My friend Abby, emailed me, is like, "Hey, I picked up the new Rolling Stone, and I found you." Strictly because I wanted to see if your picture was in it, and it was, and I got it. It's the 500 greatest rock songs of all time, I believe, issue. If it's not the greatest guitarist, I have to go look. And I'm going to pull it up to scan the picture anyway, so yeah, and then, like, right after she told me, like, the office comes and tells me, like, "Hey, the manager just told us, like, you guys are in Rolling Stone." So, of course, I go get my own copy of it. I originally had 2. I think I gave one to my mom, and the copy I have currently is a little battered. I'd like a nicer copy. But anyway, sure enough, there's a little almost thumbnail-sized picture of me way back when I was super skinny, hanging out with my late great friend Chris Gethings, and we got Mr. Jacob Dylan, the rock star, in between us. It was, it's my 15 minutes of fame, I like to say. It was a great experience, and it was really cool. Some of the things you end up doing in the Navy. It's not just pain in the ass work or combat related or actionable items out in off of Africa worthy stuff. Anyways, I thought I would share that a little bit with you. Next time I do one of these, I will get back to around 1997. But that is all the Salty Seaman's got for you now. Look for a military movie bullshit coming your way in a few days. Peace.